Happy Friday, everyone. We are here for round 15. I'm Warnie, the coach of the Warnie Dogs, and this is Drew Jones,
coach of the Mountain Goats and host of the Goat Fantasy podcast. This is the Luke Jackson edition.
Oh,
Wowee.
Wow. How about that last night? You would, he probably owed you that a little bit as Jackson owners, I would say, just to get a nice score, but it was more than just a nice score. It was the top score of the year so far. So to punch that out, and then hopefully you went against any of Calvin's advice to say, don't put the VC on him, there's other stuff to come, that would have just set your weekend up perfectly.
Yeah, one of my mates who's gone really well, he's a big Jackson owner for the whole season, which is part of the reason why I so hyped the rankings. I haven't spoken to him yet, but I'm hopeful that he had the VC on Luke. I think it made perfect sense against Mitch Edwards to put the VC on. It's just that Grundy got that like 70 or 80 against him a few weeks ago. That was probably the only thing that was sitting in the back of my mind. But I VC Jackson in Super Coach, nice. Which is that's the platform I'm scoring points in. So I'm fairly happy with that. But geez, what an interesting Thursday night matchup it was, considering the gravity of the decision around Bailey Smith, having 2 weeks off. Like, I feel like once that news was filtering out, like that just added everyone's thoughts. And I'm really fascinated to know where you landed, because your position last night was that you were holding. Did you bend or break on that?
No, I stuck with it, and I don't know if that's a little bit of stubbornness with what I wanted to do, because I was pretty firm on it to begin with, and I think my firmness was all about going, who am I actually going to that I want? Now, as the day went on, or as the 24 hours from teams to lockout, I think I had if you didn't have Nick Dacos or Jordan Dawson, I think you can do that. And as long as, obviously that's working for your side and what you need to do, because you're going to want to have a plan to get him back. That's the other thing. Like, the Cats have a nice run to finish the year as well. There's going to be points there. He is a must-have. He's a hard bloke to barrack against if you weren't able to get him, or you went into a plan of going, well, I don't necessarily need him. He's been, a little bit below standard the last couple of weeks or whatever. But yeah, I sort of stuck with it because I didn't have anyone that I really wanted to get, because whoever I'd buy into this week, in my opinion, was probably not going to be someone that I was loving that much, knowing that probably the guys that I've been sort of wanting that I haven't got all have this bye to come. So all these good players are the ones that are coming up this week or next week that I'd be aiming for.
Well, I finished AFL tonight and did a podcast immediately afterwards for Goat Fantasy, and that was sort of just as the news was breaking. And so just to give you an idea of what happens here. So Lockie Reed tweeted about Baz at about 5:55 or something. So which just triggered me to send a few text messages to try and get confirmation. So the general rule of thumb is you want double confirmation before you go with anything. So it took a bit of time, I reckon, for a lot of people to try to get that, because when it comes to captain's runs for Victorian teams in interstate venues and for flights heading out on busy days, there's always going to be the possibility that these things get missed. And then eventually it sort of probably started to filter out properly a few minutes before the teams dropped. So I just sat there and literally just went through a list of players. And like you're saying, there's not much option to go to, because Bontempelli probably would have been the perfect move. We've all been waiting to get him, but you can't get him because he's got the bike up. We all want Max Holmes if you don't already have him. And in the end, a sideways move to Max Holmes last night would have been quite good. I think he ended up being a pretty reasonable score. But then you're getting in a player for 1 week and then he's got the bye at the neck. So complicated, isn't it? I just wanted to run this by at the top of the podcast for those listening.
Yeah. And it's an interesting thing too.
So
like the other part of it too, like I would be saying as well, this is the time of the year that you can possibly make that move as well. Like earlier in the year, as we're still just trying to build our team, build our value, the hold might be on a little bit more at that point. But in saying that, then you're going to have the players that you could switch to. Now is the time that you could do that, but it is still just that risky play. And I think, I said it last night on our stream when we were doing it, is that I traded out Baz and that was a hard watch trying to get him back. And that was something that I didn't love doing.
So for those who have done it, who were listening this morning, so there's a Dacos, there's a Dawson. Maybe you've made the move to get him out so that he's not locked in your team, but you haven't totally landed on where you could go. Apart from those two, is there a world where you could use your DPP and bring a defender in? And I know I had this week because Archie Roberts, so you probably already brought a defender in, but like, is this your chance to get a Noble? Like, is Noble good enough? Good enough? Is Whitfield good enough to consider bringing them into your side? Even like a Nasai, if you just want to get him, even though you're going to have to ride the bye next week?
Well, Whit and Ash, yes, I think you could go with that, because even with the cash you're banking there, it might allow you to set up for those upgrades the next week, because I think you've always still got to have your eye on next week's moves and the week after, realistically, as we head into the round 17 best 22s back again. That's probably the thing that, hashtag team dependent with all of this, is that wherever your side is and whatever that's looking like, you've got to be looking towards in after these trades. We've got 5 trades to sort of get our teams in the best state it can be when we roll back into our best 22s. And so everyone's on the table in that week too. Could it mean that you got cash to, in an ideal world, wouldn't that be awesome to be doing a double upgrade ahead of round 17 and you're going into that round feeling pretty good about yourself? But also what you can do, like, we're thinking about some of these players. You can, I can keep riding him at an F6 or keep riding him as a D6 or something like that. Is that it doesn't take much to flick that around. A Tanner Bruin was a perfect example of that. Obviously, things fell into place with him with Baz out, and not that the mid clock was massive for him last night, but it was there, but he didn't have the high CBAs to do it. But he had a 45 last week, and so every reason to trade him out. And, if he busts that out in one of those weeks where you're going, I can keep riding him because he had that 90-odd last night, that you could get that 40 and be cooked because of that. So, you've got to – there's a bit of luck that comes with that. So what I'm saying there, if you're playing your Jagger at F6 or your Milan Murdoch, well, we saw what Murdoch did last week, and he's a pretty – sort of obvious move for coaches to be moving out this week, is that it only takes 1 week of scores to turn someone's fortune around of being, I can keep playing them, and then they go and put out that stinker.
So I want a definitive list here. So you give me a yes or a no. So Dawson and Dacos obviously are tick, bring
full blown. Yep.
And you're saying Ash and Whitfield also ticks if you can do the DPP?
Yeah, I think you can do that. And with where their prices are at, you've got a few dollars that you can be playing with, which, as long as you're making that work for your team, they're a tick for me. Just.
What about Noble?
Yeah, so this is where I'm like, even if I was upgrading to him, I'm feeling a little bit dubious. I don't know why. I think, is it just the fact that he feels like he's getting too expensive. He's had this stretch. He's done it with some of those harder matchups as well. So everything should add up and be okay. It just feels a really weird thing to be spending that much for him. But, you're 1.07 or so, or whatever it is, and, you're calling that price at about 110. Like, it's John Noble. And probably I think I'm a bit glass half empty when I'm looking at some of these players like this too, is going, the Suns have sucked and he's been smashing it. Do things change?
Yeah, and I think it's a valid point on Noble. Is there any other player in fantasy that you would consider?
Sheasel, but everyone's got him. He's probably the other one that you could do that with. But across other positions, it's really hard. That's the thing. I'm just a no, and that's what really came down to my decision at the end for the hold. Yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? So, for people with bad teams like me, I was able to bring in Dawson, which I've been putting off because of how expensive he was. But also 3 weeks ago, I made the choice between Smith and Dawson, and I went Bailey Smith. And that has ended up being the wrong call. It's probably cost me a premium in the end, because this week I've just been shuffling, Roberts and Smith, and that's just been my season really. Is I brought in Grundy, and then he goes out a couple of weeks later. You bring in Baz, he goes out a couple of weeks later. So not like, when it's not working for you, it's not working. So And then, in Supercoach is the opposite, and that this is just fantasy footy to a T. I have Baz in Supercoach, so I get a leg up on everyone because not many people in Supercoach would be trading Baz at this time of year, given the restrictions on the amount of moves he makes. Anyway, should we get into the games?
Yeah, we can. Just probably a couple off last night. We've got the Cats that have got the bye coming up, and so the targets there might be your Max Holmes coming off that. So I think he's got to be on the wish list prior to round 17 if you're looking at. But the Dockers, we haven't really touched them as a club, like Luke Jackson, obviously, and Murphy Reid too, another awesome game from him, cracking a 97 there. But we're not touching those, but did the Andrew Brayshaw, who is under 900K, I don't know if you've been there before when it hasn't worked out very well in the past, could he tickle your fancy as an option under 900K?
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Because playing the two-way role for the first half of the season, that's why it's so affordable. And then he was given a bit more license last night to ball hunt. Just if he slips back into that tagging role, even for 1 week, that can torpedo your season. So it would be risky for a team like mine.
You could have a crack.
Be one of my best players, probably. So yeah, sure. I mean, who knows? But see, so Bruin punches out the 95 for me this week or whatever it was.
You take it and run.
That would be a great move. That would be a great move for me next week. Would a Brayshaw or something, because it doesn't cost you that much, but you're getting a clear upgrade. So, yeah, like I said, for teams like mine, Andy Brayshaw, I can tell.
All right, let's get cracking then. Friday night footy tonight, we're off to People First Stadium, Gold Coast and Hawthorn. So we're seeing another one of the Academy kids in. That's Bo Adensel. Just quietly knows his fantasy, this kid too. So watch out for him. He's coming off a 120. He's a follower of DT Talk, so that's a good thing. So that's got to be a positive thing about the mindset of a player if he is there. So we'll see how he goes. Looking forward to it. But you're probably not touching that with our other cheaper mid-season draftees and other options coming through. So, but one to watch. Nick Holman, Mac, and he's in, as well as Jared Witt's into ruck, so they'll be back to their dual ruck setup as they are against the Hawks, who have been loving that this year and going with those moves. So they're out. Schoolman, Ballard and Jepson have been omitted. So for the Hawks, Barras and Morrison are the ins with Perez and Bodie Ryan omitted. So Suns, they are coming off. Well, they've had their bye. Sorry, they were an early bye, so they are options. Noah Anderson has been hot on people's trade-in targets as well, so he wasn't there in those options if you were trading Baz to them. But I've seen a few people go Baz to Noah. Could you pull that move? Would you be happy to grab Noah Anderson, considering we saw that tag go to Petrarca last week?
Well, you tell me. Are you taking it off?
Well, if Roy's grabbing him, and Roy owned him before, so if that's enough to tell you that maybe it is a tick to do that. He's obviously coming off a great score. Our worry about them was their draw, and then the tags to potentially come. But yeah, is Petrarca the man that just now... He's more damaging than what Noah Anderson is. In saying that, though, how many damaging games have we seen from Noah Anderson over the years as well? Like, he can go forward, he does kick goals, he does all those things as well, but maybe he's obviously less reliant on doing that because there's a little bit of piggish behaviour last week down in Geelong as well from Noah Anderson. He was getting some of those 45 kicks, and he did all the things to hit the stat lines.
We'd be disrespecting Anderson to say that he's not damaging enough to tag. I think the advantage that you have with tagging Petrarca is that his CBA is a bit lower, so not sacrificing an inside midfielder to do the job. But yeah, I think between the two, they're going to get a tag almost every week. Yeah, that's always been the risk. Always been the risk with Noah Anderson, and he, for those who started with him, he absolutely killed us at the start of the year. But his form since having the appendectomy has been great. Personally, I don't be doing Lee Smith to Noah Anderson.
No,
it's just getting a totally different player. You're going from built different, scores a ton every week, to someone crossing your fingers. You're going to get a ton.
No, exactly. Also in this game, though, Hawthorn, they're coming off their bye, but there's not really the targets. At 800K, could you consider Will Day, or Do you still think the time on ground's going to be an issue? It's a build / the fact that his body is, and maybe one of the flags that we always think about Will Day anyway.
So let me give you if I can find it quickly, I want to give you a run home for the Hawks because it's pretty good. Let me just play the elevator while it's up. So I'm talking Newcomb, I'm talking Day, and I'm talking Sicily, Amon, Impey. Any a good budget-ish option if you like that idea this week. So they've got, in terms of games which should score well on the run home, so Gold Coast, GWS, then they've got Melbourne, Carlton, Richmond, Essendon, North Melbourne.
That's a great run, isn't it?
The Lions, which will be tough, and then Collingwood and West Coast. I think the run home for the Hawks
that's as good as any is. Yeah, that's as good as any team, I reckon.
So I think you have to keep your expectations in check, but I think there's a number of Hawks players who you don't have to break the bank to get. And I think Hawthorn will have a really good run home. They've had a challenging first half of the year in terms of quality opponents, and the draw, as you just heard, starts to tip more in their favour on the run home. So that's just something to keep in the back of your mind.
Yep. All right, let's move to Saturday, and that is Adelaide and Melbourne. So 12:45 over there at Adelaide, over 1:15 in the east. Taylor Walker's back in, and Isaac Rankin is there too after that calf, and Mark Keane, first game for a while for him as well. They've lost Worrell to illness, Pedler's injured, and Toby Murray has been omitted for the D's. So Petty's out injured, as is Lucas Cook after making his debut, the mid-season draftee, and then Bailey Laurie has been omitted in. We've got Tom McDonald, Matthew Jefferson, and Caleb Windsor. So back into the middle there for Windsor, which might be an interesting thing for seeing how Joel Fitzgerald goes, because that was probably a nice little, if you call it a soft launch, a nice little launch there for him with Windsor out, who has been obviously getting plenty of CBAs along the way.
Yeah, they just have to go around to move a defender back. So I'm not quite sure what they'll do there. And they've been pretty fluid with their backs this year, to be honest, because they haven't really had Dale and Xavier Lindsay for quite some time. And Bowie's only come in the last few weeks. So I'm not quite sure how that mix ends up. But I mean, it's a brainer as far as Fitzgerald goes. I texted you last week and said, like, he's just a slam dunk. It's a gift. Yeah, so hopefully a lot of sharp coaches would have done that, but I think you've got to get him in this week. Well, you've got your opportunity. And then it's the Demons against Crows. That's right. So Hawk Kahan should go well without Worrell. Mark King gets most of his point from intercepts, and he does take a few kick-ins. So I'm interested to see how the points get distributed down back. But I think with
Wayne, that might be a worry.
Well, Wayne just dominates anyway. Yep. He's got his 90, 100 locked away. I'm just wondering how Worrell's point get shared around, and maybe it's just King just takes them. Yeah. But I'm hoping Hawkeye has a big week. Rankin's back, we know. I think he's a bit expensive to launch on.
He's another one that's just a little bit of a worry of getting as well. And I think, this Crows midfield, it's still up in the air in a little bit of the sense of that, I think, because, you've got Dawson who's locked in there, but Berry needs to play there. If he's in the side, that's what he's doing. They named Peatling on the ball, so they do float a few through there, but, the Rochelle thing, you might still have a little bit of hope in him, but you just sort of almost can't, because we haven't even seen that really happen for him, even with Rankin injured.
There's no hope, Warnie. It's just a warm body on field who you can't move out if you're a Rochelle owner. And I can speak from personal experience.
He's going on the end of season trip for you, isn't he?
Yeah, he'll probably make the whole year.
All right, let's have a look at GWS and Carlton. That is 4:15 at NG Stadium. So Cornelio is back in there for the Giants, and they lose Toby McMullen. Cottrell's back for the Blues with Flynn Young omitted. So the name of the week this week has been one name, and it's Brent. Not even Brent Daniels, it's just Brent. Are you picking him?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm a Brent believer. I got him in all formats last week, so the role's there. He's got proven field fantasy stripes. It's just been purely a body issue. So he's still cheap enough to take the risk. Then I was hoping to bring DeGoey in this week. Daniels last week and DeGoey this week, but because of the Baz Smith stuff, you kind of lose that ability to make the move you want. But I think Daniels, for his price, I would have him just ahead of DeGoey, who was also sick early in the week. So
is that an issue?
I don't think you. Well, he's been named and he trained yesterday, but just a little flag to consider. It's another point for Daniels, I suppose, if you're putting them up against each other. But you don't have to overthink this one.
The 150K, the 150K difference between him and DeGoey is the thing, and it's a nice price because this is probably the sort of price that we are comfortable with paying for a forward.
Definitely. I mean, look, in an ideal world, I would want to be bringing in them both. It'd be great to have them both. So if you can make that happen, then well.
Yeah, Blues coming off a bye as well. A few of us traded out some players in there, like a Sam Walsh. He might come back and burn anyone that traded this week as well, but I don't think you're buying into him or anything like that. Jagger, he might be one that you'd still ride for a little bit as a forward option. But yeah, it's an interesting week for these guys. Ash and Whitfield, we said that we would just definitely buy into. I think either of those could be a good skipper as well against the Blues. So we might see some free-flowing points in this game. This might be one that we do actually see some points altogether, is what I think about when this match is all happening. All right. I was going
to say, Archie Roberts going out, most people are having to get a defender. Are you Whitfield or Ash?
So I think I'm Ash over Whitfield, and I think that probably stems back to there's a little bit of body thing in that as well, but probably just seeing the ease that you see Ash get the points at times compared to Whitfield. Sometimes he can be a hard watch, old Whit, and that might come back to me buying him for the Murdoch tag, the laid out with the hammy, and so I'm Ash over Whitfield, I think, but both are great options.
Because Ash is younger, he's quicker, he's more athletic. I think it's just it's purely like an eye test thing.
Yeah,
it's just you feel more comfortable with him in your team. I think when then Whitfield kind of lopes around, and the fact that they trust Whitfield so basically to get the ball in his hands. That's why he continues to score so well. But yeah, there's something about having Lockie Ash in your team that is definitely quite rewarding.
Pies and Port, that is Saturday night at the MCG. Ned Long, Steele Sidebottom, and Sam Swadling comes in for his debut, averaging 90-odd in the VFL. Angry Anderson has been omitted. Pendle's managing Maynard hasn't got up either. So for the Power, Josh Lay is in with Jack Lukosius. Kane Farrell's out injured, and they've managed Ollie Wine. So big one here. Pies, they're coming off their bye as well. So there could be the options. Nick Dacos is the obvious one. If you don't have him, he should have been a target regardless of any Baz Smith stuff anyway. But he is probably now going to be a popular option for anyone that doesn't own, so they can get across to that easily. But Jordan De Goey has been a talk of this week. So illness during the week, but you're ticking it off as it is. And then I did see a little bit of stuff from you talking about Josh Dacos and what that means for midfield time. So what do you see happening there?
Well, he said that we spoke to him earlier this week, and said that the midfield time had been slowly ramping up as the year had gone on. It's not reflected in the CBAs, but more, I guess, CBAs and midfield time, two different things. You can start at halfback, you can start at half forward, you can start on a wing and then play as a midfielder, but not be at the CBA. So he said that will continue.
Right.
So I don't think there's necessarily going to be a huge change in scoring. My view on Josh Dacos is that he hasn't been playing that well. So when I said earlier in the week that I think that he's a really great option as a budget defender this week, and that he was in my team for the majority of the week, because he has a lot of upside on what he's currently priced at.
Yeah,
and I think the week off will do the Pies good. It'll do him good, and I think so. Reese for they've got to, really get moving second half of the year if they want to play final. So to me, it seemed like a great opportunity to get him in the side. Scores well as a midfielder or a halfback. So I think he's a good player. Yeah.
Yeah, so at that price, $859K, I think, you'd be getting at least what he's priced, that sort of thing is going along. But I think the benefit for these guys, and this is why De Goey is a nice option as well, is their draw. So they've got Port Adelaide this week, but that goes into Richmond, Gold Coast, North, and the Blues. So it's a nice sort of month run that they've got going on there that you should be able to get better than what their average is, you would think.
Yeah, I on stage, I think, had De Goey, Dacos, and Podarsky as the three ins, like the three pies.
Hot pies.
The run's good value for those players. Obviously, if you have a chance to bring Nick in, and that's obviously the move you need to make. I think you can't go wrong with Josh. Good player in real life.
Podarsky as that forward downgrade option, sort of for your bench moving forward, but might be getting a gig this week on your field. But he's sort of the one, mostly because of job security. You see him sort of slotting in, following the Jamie Elliott stuff, following the mid-season draft, that he's probably going to be there.
I think he showed on a big stage on debut exactly why they brought him in. I think he already shown that he's probably a better player than Jack Puller, so I'd expect him to keep that spot. And if they have to go a bit smaller on their forward line and sort of use Membry as the focal point and Podarsky as 1A, I think that makes sense for them. So I'm pretty comfortable bringing him in. Like, there's a part of me this week that wishes I could just go, I want to go like Rochelle to De Goey or something like that. But I just think the cash generation, I can't look at Doveston in my forward line anymore. Like, I need to get him the hell out. So I think
three trades per week.
A really solid option.
Yeah, 3 trades per week during the buys. It is an important time to fix up those cash gen and some of those yucky dots on our benches at times. So that's something to look at. Let's move to Sunday. And Richmond are playing against North Melbourne. Now, this is going to be all about Harry Sheezel coming home as our captain, I reckon. But considering what he's done the last couple of times against them. But Taj Houghton is back into the squad. Caleb Smith and Toby Nankervis, one of the longest hammies that we've seen going on. But he's back in there, which is good news for the Tasmanian from Georgetown. He's in, and we've got North Melbourne have lost Paul Curtis for that 3-week suspension. Finn O'Sullivan's back in from that concussion. Cor Hardiman and Robbie Hanson Jr. also into the squad. We'll see these teams trimmed at 5 p.m. on Friday, so check that out. But this one here, I'm going to throw to you a name that is sitting currently in my trade plans, Tim Taranto.
Yeah, I like it. And I feel like we've talked about him a lot. I've thought for a while that off the back of a tag game and a concussion game that he was going to be a really good value player to bring into the team. But I guess what you want to be doing is turning a player that will not contribute in your side at all into Taranto. Like, being able to go to a rookie up to him, it just feels like you're getting a bonus premium. I don't like it as much as a sideways or as a downgrade or whatever, but because you just know there's going to be a couple of 60s. So if you're happy to absorb those, like if Richmond get blown out of the water, it's possible that Taranto's not going to get the points that he normally would. What I liked about last week was that he was kicking goals and he took a few marks. When he was at his absolute best, he was kicking long goals, he was taking marks around the ground, laying tackles, and then getting possessions at stoppages. Like, he's very scrappy around the ball, but he can get his hands on it and be a very effective kind of all-round player. That's exactly what the Tigers would love him to be. And I think the North Melbourne matchup is a good one to start off with because he's going to be in the game. Yeah. Tigers will be in the game against North.
So Finn O'Sullivan coming back in.
I like him as a move.
Finn O'Sullivan coming back in, he has done some work, and we've also seen Simpkin do that as well. Taranto would be the target, though, wouldn't he, you'd think, in some form?
Yeah, I mean, do you think Melbourne are going into this game thinking, like, there's a couple of jobs we've got to do here at Richmond? Like, I feel like this is a game where you
let them play.
You let your players do their thing. Yeah, but maybe Foss stands next to him. centre bounce. I'm not sure it's going to be a hard take. So, because Foss kind of does his own thing, right? Like he's also trying to impact the game. So, like it as a move this week. So, what's the move that gets Taranto into your team?
So, well, if you want to call it Retchko to him. So it's sort of an upgrade from a rookie, which I don't totally love getting rid of Retchko because just for the buy plays and what we've seen so far. But it would get me. So this is probably the reason I have liked Taranto is obviously he's had a couple of good scores in the last 3 weeks, but North Melbourne this week, hopefully he can get through with that. And then it goes into Collingwood, Carlton, Melbourne. I think that sort of run of games, and if I could get the 4 games out of him, then he can become that big dog that you might need. Or if he ends up sitting at M8, that isn't a bad call at all if that's where he ends up at. So, yeah, it's probably not because we're going to get into this sideways trading season soon anyway. So that's not too far away for some teams. Some teams it might be a little bit further away, goats, but we'll see what we can do with that. But yeah, I don't know. It's where it's sitting at the moment because I'm essentially choosing him over a Jordan De Goey, which sounds. I think everyone's probably a Jordan De Goey every day of the week type thing with what he's doing. But the other side of that for me is that I'd be sort of sitting on 8 on-field forwards is where I'm at. So maybe I'm just sort of zigging a little bit here by going a Taranto rather than a De Goey. So yeah, I'm still torn on this. Some of this might even come out with some of the scores that happened before these games, where I do have a little bit of a pivot with my move.
No, there's a world where Joe Richards goes with Nick Dacos and Willem Drew sits on De Goey, and De Goey gets a 65. Yep. And you get Taranto, you get 05, and you're 40 points up, and that takes your 200 rankings up. Like you don't know, but I think there's a world where Richards and Willem Drew both do jobs for Port, and that might mean that someone else is in the gun. De Goey's been pretty bloody good for the recently. You just don't know. You never know. So I like the Taranto move. One thing to note is that Retchko's average at the MCG is something like 85.
Yeah, I did see Freako's tweet from that. That's crazy, isn't it? Like, they just must love it there. And they've got a big run of games there now too, don't they?
So if there's a way, it's clearly the move to get Taranto and get the better player. But if there's a world where you can have Retchko hang around at least the rest of the buys, maybe not you want, but others, Retchko, one of my best players. So he'll stick around for me for a while. And then Sam Banks, who, as we know, one of my favourites. Just unfortunately, I think with the forced trades this week, I'm not sure this is the week that we can do it. But, like I'm thinking next week, is there a way I can get like a Charlie Banfield with some PP to a Banks, which would be an unbelievable upgrade because he's just so cheap. But I think this is a really good test. Like I think Calvin said earlier in the week, I want to see one more week. And that's a pretty fair, that's a fair enough summation for Banks because he's really only had one game.
Well, he's still, even off the back of that, he still went down in value. His break-even's 63, so he's not necessarily going to get away from you using the sort of fantasy coach stuff. If he scores a 71, he goes up $6,000. So even if he's scoring a 90 plus, which is what you'd want to see from him, he's probably only making 20 to 30K off that. So it's not like he's getting away from you with a price that starts with a 5. That's always a nice thing there. So he'd probably still be under 600K, and then he could be that D6 type guy that you could be playing with, and the DPP is quite handy as well. Because I don't know if your team's like mine, not a lot of DPP for our defenders this year. It's quite an interesting thing that there's not the flicking between the players that you might be able to do with those, especially while I'm waiting for Holmesy and Nasir as options to be grabbing as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of the lucky ones that still has Jai Sarong, so I can do a bit of mixing and matching. But let's see how it goes next.
Last game of the round is St Kilda and the Western Bulldogs. That finishes off at 3:15 at Marvel. Boxall, Paddy Dow and Jack Higgins are into the squad there. The Dogs have lost Adam Treloar for illness, and also Cody Waitman has been managed after getting back into the side after a long time out of the game. So, Liver, is back into the squad here, as well as Baker, Davidson, McNeil, and Latham Vandermeer. So Libba is probably the big one because he hasn't been there for a while, and that midfield mix, because that's his role and that's his thing, and probably some of the players and the fantasy relevant ones. We've seen a pretty nice run from Riley Sanders, probably a little bit quieter last week, but I wonder he might be one of those players affected from that.
Yeah, potentially. I think Riley's had such a good year. I wouldn't expect them to unplug him from the midfield quickly. I mean, Treloar going out means that opens up some minutes for Libba. Interesting. I don't know if you heard Bevo yesterday. He said we tried Treloar by sitting him to see if that would spark him up for the fourth quarter, which he said there was a little bounce, but not much. But unfortunately, Adam is on his very last legs as an AFL player. But it sounds like Bevo is going to keep trying to get him going. But I think the injuries over a long period probably catching up with Treloar. So unfortunately for Roy's draft team, I don't know if he needs much more of him this year. So this like 5 o'clock teams is sort of big here. Like if Luke Kennedy keeps his spot, that you can start to say, oh, maybe that will affect Riley because Kennedy's an inside midfielder. Let's see how it all works out. But they need to bring in a forward because Waitman's out, which might be Vandermeer or McNeil or whatever. But the Dogs need a bit of a lift, and interesting game against the Saints. Just all we want is for Naz just to have a nice tag game, shut him down, at least flatten out that price or even bring it down a little bit so we can launch in round 17.
Yep, exactly. I reckon there'll be that sort of thing because he will be a huge target for us in a fortnight's time. So already writing the podcast notes now for that one because he will be those ones off that buy. So actually the buys in general have been quite interesting in that sense of who's been on them and where our targets go. And sometimes, we try to play the game of going, yep, you get them after their buy. Oh, in some cases, it might have been all right just to have gone, nah, bugger it, let's just grab them. And you could go through with them like a bit of a Max Holmes or someone like that a couple of weeks ago. You would have been pretty happy with just rolling with that one instead of maybe a decision that you made. Anyway, here we are, round 15. So this is the 10th last round of the season. Drew, we're counting down very hard. We'll be in single figures after this one. So your moves then, you've got your Baz out, you've got your Roberts out. So who are you expecting the big games from then?
So Jordan Dawson comes in with the VC, and so Whitfield will be my defender that comes in. So because some cash has been freed up, and I think there'll be a few of us next week that do probably 2 rookies in. So I feel like I don't need to carry too much cash. So hopefully Whitfield can have a big day. Hopefully Jordan has a big day. Although my history of trading in premiums has been they off the wagon. So hopefully I don't break Dawson, and then Podarski, I think, is the move this week. But honestly, I like a lot of the rookies. I think Swadling looks like he's got a bit of fantasy game, and he's a really versatile player. There's a possibility that once Swadling is in, he can play into midfield and pinch hit as a forward. So I like Swadling, and I think Adamsall's got a bit of fantasy game to him because he can tackle as well as accumulate, and that is one of our favourite qualities in a fantasy midfielder. So watch on a few of the young guys this week. No,
they definitely are. That's nice. You're all about collecting the sets. I'm just trying to work out who could be the best of the options that I've got in front of me, and it's one that I'm not loving. I wish we didn't have these forced moves, but that's what we get in fantasy football. That's where we're at. Anyway, Drew, thank you for your time. We can be following everything at Goat Fantasy News, wherever you get your news from, and don't forget to be subscribing to the podcast so you get the nice drops and you get the hot news, stuff like the Baz Lenker stuff. That's what we love the Goat Fantasy feed for, because we can get that instant reaction from the man there who should have been at the airport and could have given us that news about 5 hours earlier, probably.
Yes, unfortunately, State of Origin got in the way. Pesky rugby league in town. Warnie, appreciate your time, mate. We'll catch you next.
Legend, mate.